Greetings all, and welcome to the 5th episode of TM Technical Movement. For today, we'll be looking at the Frustration, Return, Horn Attack, Scratch, Slash, Thrash, Strength, Fury Attack, Double Slap, and Struggle attacks.
Considered to be the signature attack of Baneri, the Frustration attack is a full-powered strike with a limb or entire body, driven completely by the hatred a Pokémon has towards its trainer. It is unknown why Baneri is able to do so, but it seems that the species is uniquely gifted in that it has the ability to convert the hatred it feels towards its trainers into a potent physical strike unlike nearly anything else they are capable of. The exact mechanics of the attack are still poorly understood, but it seems that the entire mood is based on the user using its negative emotions as fuel for an intense physical strike that may or may not prove to be powerful. For Pokemon that are joyful and happy beyond belief, there simply isn't any rage to be had, and thus nothing to drive the attack, so effectively becomes as pointless as a splash technique. For those that are exuberantly miserable with their trainers, however, the attack maxes out at a base power of 102, which is far more than nearly any other attack that costs the same amount of stamina. Because its damage capabilities are completely dependent upon the user's mood at any given point, it is generally an unreliable attack to use on a regular basis. However, Silphco quickly learned through practice that the move is nonetheless readily applicable to practically any species of Pokemon capable of naturally learning TMs. This became more than apparent when they released the move as TM21 within a second generation line of TMs, as it quickly flew off the shelves and became an instant classic among cold, battle-focused trainers until it was discontinued in the 8th generation line. It might be less than fully reliable, but for those that know how to use it, this is a move more than worth using when the chips are down. While physically countering the move would be dependent upon how the opposition is attacking, there is no general rule of thumb when it comes to directly countering or dodging the Frustration attack. Strong armor in general, however, can help reduce and negate the damage dealt by this attack, though weaker armor is unlikely to perform as well without sustaining critical damage or failing altogether at higher power levels. The Frustration attack's finicky nature generally makes it a poor choice in most tournament battles, but if the opposing side holds very poor bonds between Pokemon and trainer, it can still be a devastating weapon that only strong defenses will be able to fully cope with. Considered to be the signature attack of Lopunny, the return attack is also a full-powered strike with a limb or entire body driven completely by the happiness a Pokemon has towards its trainer. It is unknown why Lopunny are able to do so, but it seems that the species is uniquely gifted in that it has the ability to convert the happiness it feels towards its trainer into a potent physical strike unlike nearly anything else they are capable of. The exact mechanics of the attack, like Frustration, are still poorly understood, but it seems that the entire move is based on the user using its positive emotions as fuel for an intense physical strike that may or may not prove to be powerful. For Pokemon that are miserable beyond belief, there simply isn't any happiness to be had, and thus nothing to drive the attack, so effectively becomes as pointless as a splash technique. For those that are exuberantly happy beyond belief with their trainers, however, the attack maxes out at a base power of 102, which is far more than nearly any other attack that costs the same amount of stamina. Because its damage capabilities are completely dependent upon the user's mood at any given point, it generally is an unreliable attack to use on a regular basis. However, Silphco quickly learned through practice that the move is nonetheless readily applicable to practically any species of Pokemon able to naturally learn TMs. This became more than apparent when they released the move as TM27 within the second generation line of TMs, as it quickly flew off the shelves and became an instant classic among carrying trainers until it was discontinued in their 8th generation line. It might be less than fully reliable, but for those that know how to use it, this is a move more than worth using when the chips are down. As with the Frustration attack, while physically countering the move will be dependent upon how the opposition is actually attacking, there is no general rule of thumb when it comes to directly countering or dodging the return attack. Strong armor in general can, however, help reduce and negate the damage dealt by the attack, though weaker armor is unlikely to perform as well without sustaining critical damage or failing altogether at higher power levels. The return attack's finicky nature generally makes it a poor choice in most tournament battles, but if the opposing side holds very strong bonds between Pokemon and trainer, it can still be a devastating weapon that only strong defenses will be able to fully cope with. The horn attack basically involves gouging or otherwise fiercely jabbing a target with a sharp horn or tusk at close range, potentially breaking through skin and inflicting considerable physical trauma in the process. Because of its limited usage among Pokemon in general, the horn attack is a fairly uncommon move that is oftentimes ignored in light of more interesting attacks. In terms of sheer power alone, however, the horn attack is a considerable weapon that can allow Pokemon with long horns or tusks to deliver a similar amount of physical pain as a slash attack at a lower stamina expenditure. As with other fundamental attacks, the horn attack is simple enough that it can be executed cleanly and effectively without placing the user in the way of too much bodily harm. Unfortunately, the move's relatively high base power is the only truly admirable aspect of it, as it has no special features or extra features to make it of much use in professional tournaments, but for trainers that are just starting out, nothing quite beats the ability to do fairly large amounts of damage to the opposition early on. Since an opponent must use a horn or pointed structure of some sort in order to execute a horn attack, striking or otherwise damaging the offending object can help reduce or negate the damage dealt by this attack. Otherwise, however, it is exceptionally difficult to dodge in close quarters. Armor can, however, help reduce or negate the damage dealt by this attack. The horn attack is not a move that will be used very extensively in battle, despite being a basic move, so it isn't one that needs to be worried about a lot. If faced with an opponent with access to the attack, however, avoiding close contact or otherwise holding one's ground with strong defenses are the only decent counters that can be made against it. Much as its name suggests, the scratch attack involves attacking an opponent through the direct contact of hard, pointed claws with flesh or armor in close quarters. Although perhaps not as strong as versatile as the tackle and pound attacks, the scratch attack has a significant advantage over both moves in that it can actually be performed with some distance between the user and the opponent, while still maintaining the ability to strike with perfect accuracy under normal conditions, since the attack involves contact with claws and not major body parts. While this distance generally varies with the size of the user's claws, sometimes to the point of non-existence as in the case of the Diglett family, the chance to generate a bit of breathing room and potentially prepare for a counterattack is extremely valuable in practically any combat situation. Experienced trainers can and should take advantage of this when training young Pokémon, not only because of this fact's importance in close quarters, but also because it can effectively be applied to other types of attacks that require sharp claws or blades to deal damage. Consequently, however, because the claws involved in the attack are being raked across slightly enough to not cause lacerations in every case, the chance of breaking the claws is fairly high, making it rather ineffective against sturdier opponents. Since an opponent needs sharp claws or bladed appendages of some sort to execute the scratch attack, damaging these bladed accessories can help reduce and negate the damaging power of this move. Otherwise, the attack is extremely difficult to dodge in close quarters. Armor can, however, help reduce and negate the damage dealt by this attack. The scratch attack is extremely fundamental, and thus is little more than a way to buy time until a Pokémon can get access to more powerful attacks, but even then it is a move that beginning trainers will learn to stand by as a readily executed move that can offer a bit of a tactical edge and thus prove to be an interesting surprise to beginning trainers. In essence, the slash attack involves user attacking a target with a forceful tearing of claws, sides or blade armature against skin or armor. While the scratch attack generally only involves fairly light contact with sharp appendages of some sort, and thus is nothing too debilitating, the slash attack is a far more powerful slashing strike capable of dealing some nasty damage in close quarters. Since the amount of shear force being applied during the attack far exceeds that used by a scratch attack, damage is systematically dealt to unarmored flesh through any lacerations and underlying tissue damage from physical trauma, intensifying the overall amount of damage actually dealt by the attack. Since the attack is applied with all the same basic principles and features found in the scratch attack, it is exceptionally accurate and can be used a small distance away from the opposition, granting the user some much needed breathing room in intense close quarters combat. What makes the attack particularly valuable, however, is that the forceful cunning associated with the attack has been proven to trigger exceptionally large pain responses immediately upon contact, leaving the target slightly more vulnerable to damage. In short, this gives the slash attack a higher chance of scoring a critical hit. Since critical hits completely negate any possible defensive alterations that have been made to the opposition, the slash attack's usefulness against defensively minded opponents is highly appreciated by experienced trainers of all classes, in turn making it one of the most effective attacks available to a Pokémon. Since an opponent needs sharp claws or bladed appendages of some sort to execute the slash attack, damaging these bladed accessories can help reduce and negate the damaging power of this move. Otherwise, the attack is exceptionally difficult to dodge in close quarters. Armor can, however, help reduce and negate the damage dealt by this attack. The slash attack might only be moderately powerful, but its higher chance of scoring a critical hit can also make it difficult to counter when trying to play defensively, so sturdy defenses and protection against critical hits are highly recommended for countering the attack's most dangerous attribute. Much as its name might suggest, the Thrash attack is effectively a violent, adrenaline-fueled rampage that strikes nearby opponents hard without preference, in turn laying waste to any unarmored opponents within the user's range. The Thrash attack is relatively unique in that it completely and utterly channels a Pokemon's adrenaline into a force of pure unbridled chaos that is very difficult to avoid. During the onset of this attack, the user's adrenal gland pumps out nearly lethal levels of adrenaline into the system, which quickly flood the brain and send the user into a furious panic that intensifies their strength immensely and turns them into mobile weapons of destruction. Even though the attack has a fairly high stamina cost, a Pokemon could use the attack 2 to 3 times before they finally run out of steam and have to use more stamina to execute the attack again. Unfortunately, the Thrash attack's immense power comes with 2 small issues. For one thing, a Pokemon will be unable to stop using the attack until they finally calm down, in turn meaning that strategic movements or planned attacks will be impossible to communicate to them, and the user will be unable to actually select a specific target to attack. For the duration of the move, the only thing on the user's mind is anger. The second and perhaps more important flaw is that once the user calms down, it becomes unable to recall its actions or even think properly for a few minutes, resulting in the infliction of confusion. Though this will not happen if the attack misses or otherwise interrupted before the user recovers on its own. Even so, the Thrash attack is highly valued among trainers, not only because a considerable number of Pokemon can learn it, but because its after effects can easily be cured by a held item such as a berry, making it a potent move that can be used at least twice before serious complications occur. Because the opposition is unable to respond normally to emotions or even pain during the execution of a Thrash attack, it is exceptionally difficult to force them to cancel the attack, otherwise dodge the move in close quarters. Strong armor in general can, however, help reduce or negate the amount of damage dealt by this attack, but weaker armor is unlikely to perform as well without sustaining critical damage or failing altogether. Trainers that specialize in using a Thrash attack will often have their Pokemon hold berries that can cure the confused condition after the attack, so stealing or otherwise destroying the item can help reduce the attack's effectiveness in the long term. In the short term, the best thing that one can do is hold on with strong defenses on one side and try to defeat the opposition before the damage dealt by this vicious assault becomes irrecoverable. In essence, the strength attack involves performing some random feat of strength, like picking up a large boulder and using it to attack an opponent. The strength attack is among one of the most confusing moves of all, because its name literally describes what it is, but in a way that is incomprehensible from a combat perspective. As such, the strength move itself is not a real attack, but more of a pseudo-technique, whose effectiveness allow Pokemon like Machamp to utilize their full muscular strength to perform amazing feats of strength, with the actual attack portion using that temporary power boost to inflict damage to the opponent in some fashion. For some Pokemon, this comes in the form of a massive punch that works like a Mega Punch, but with much better accuracy. For others, it may involve picking up an object like a large boulder and hurling it at the opposition. Still others may take the opportunity to tackle the opposition or even entangle them with a tentacle like appendage and then squeeze. Regardless of how the attack is actually executed, the fact that the attack is performed as a result of a strength boost normalizes its type and effectively sets its damage capacities to a constant value in practice. As such, the move is fairly limited as a true attack in battle, but the fact that it has normally perfect accuracy can nonetheless make it a solid move to use in just about any situation imaginable. The primary issue with the strength attack, particularly among trainers, is that the move is isolated to a small number of Pokemon, thus limiting the potential commercial usefulness of its attributes. When Silph released their first generation line of TMs and HMs, they only intended them to be used by trainers for combat purposes. HMs in particular were initially designed as experimental devices for either reproducing moves that had been custom taught to Pokemon by expert trainers, or experimentally derived from select specimens, like the strength attack, for the benefit of other trainers that were otherwise unable to utilize them for the given resources. The devices, referred to as hidden machines because of limited production numbers and expensive constructs, were initially unpopular and were almost never seen in use because of their rarity. When Silph learned that the moves were being applied in ways other than combat alone, such as the construction and demolition industries in the case of the strength hidden machine, however, they quickly began to remarket them towards those specific industries, increasing the popularity and production numbers many times over with only a few months. As a consequence, the strength attack remained HM04 within every single generation of TM and HM produced by Silph for as long as they produced HMs, though this means that it was eventually discontinued from service, only to be reinstated as TM96 within the recent Sinnoh Special Edition set. Since the actual manner in which a strength attack is executed differs from Pokemon to Pokemon, it is very difficult to predict how the move will work, and thus is exceptionally difficult to dodge in close quarters. Strong armor in general, however, can help reduce or negate the damage dealt by this attack, though weaker armor is unlikely to perform as well without sustaining critical damage or failing altogether. The strength attack is not likely a move to be seen in battle anymore outside of Machamp because of its lack of attributes and limited usage among Pokemon, but the fact that it is a solid move that is difficult to predict and dodge will nonetheless make it a staple attack among intermediate trainers and should be prepared for with strong defenses and a level head. The Fury attack basically involves a furious jabbing attack with a point appendage of some sort, dealing light damage repeatedly within a short period of time as an end result. Unlike carefully placed pound or slam attacks, the Fury attack is effectively a series of blind strikes performed out of sheer fury without any regards to aim or target location. Though this makes the attack particularly inaccurate, the fact that most Pokemon learn it fairly early on in their lives helps to compensate for this problem. Because each strike is initiated quickly and without regards to applied force, the damage dealt by each strike is remarkably low, but the strikes come quickly enough that an opponent cannot easily block more than one of them in a sequence. On average, a single Fury attack can strike an opponent 2 to 5 times before the user has to relax his muscles slightly to prepare for another attack, in turn dealing a noble amount of damage in the right cases. Unfortunately, the sheer amount of stamina needed to utilize the attack in battle heavily belittles its damage potential, making the attack only truly useful to beginning trainers that rather deal with the attack's inherent risks that rely solely on pound attacks if it means potentially dealing more damage. It is also known that because the attack actually strikes multiple times in a short period of time, it can be used to override the effects of the sturdy ability and items like the Focus Sash or Focus Band, as well as amplify the effects of the weak armor ability. Since the Fear attack is performed blindly without much regard to target location, fairly agile Pokémon can usually dodge most if not all of the strikes involved in the attack in close quarters, though there is no way to easily stop the attack once it gets going. Although the attack is capable of taking advantage of abilities like sturdy and weak armor, as well as items like the Focus Sash and Focus Band, the amount of damage done by even a few blows is still minor enough in many cases to be negligible, reducing its overall effectiveness in light of more powerful attacks with similar functions. Armor of almost any quality can easily repel the damage done by each individual strike, making it nearly impossible to use the attack unless the opposition is unarmored. Even so, weak armor may become slightly damaged by the attack's repeated blows, which can potentially lead to complications if combat lasts for an extended period of time, or if one's Pokémon is relatively low on energy. Much as its name suggests, the double slap attack involves harshly slapping the opposition back and forth repeatedly and quickly enough that countering is effectively impossible between blows. While Pokémon that use moves like Furious Swipes and Fury Attack generally have some sort of major offense to back up their attacks, there are still many species of Pokémon that are unable to truly defend themselves very well in close quarters. As a response, these creatures simply utilize what little physical strength they have to hit hard and fast. While a simple slap does little damage even to humans, and is generally more of an insult than a threat, the fact that the double slap attack utilizes multiple slaps thrown quickly in succession means that the move is capable of actually being a threat in battle. On average, a single double slap attack can strike an opponent 2 to 5 times before the user has to relax his muscles slightly to prepare for another attack, in turn dealing a notable amount of damage in the right cases. Unfortunately, the sheer amount of stamina needed to actually utilize the attack in battle, as well as the move's relatively low accuracy rate, heavily belittles its damage potential, making the attack only truly useful to beginning trainers who would rather deal with the attack's inherent risks than rely solely on other attacks if it means potentially dealing more damage. It is also noted that because the attack actually strikes multiple times in a short period of time, it can be used to override the effects of the sturdy ability and items like the Focus Sash or Focus Band, as well as amplify the effects of the weak armor ability. Since a hand of some sort is needed to utilize a double slap attack, striking or otherwise damaging the opponent's limbs can help reduce or negate the amount of damage dealt by this attack. If this is not an option, however, fairly agile Pokémon can still dodge the attack in close quarters. While the move is capable of taking advantage of abilities like sturdy and weak armor, as well as items like the Focus Sash and the Focus Band, the amount of damage done by even a few blows is still minor enough in many cases to be negligible, reducing its overall effectiveness in light of more powerful attacks with similar functions. Armor of almost any quality can easily repel the damage done by each individual strike, making it nearly impossible to make any use of the attack unless the opposition is unarmored. Even so, weaker armor may become slightly damaged by the attack's repeated blows, which can potentially lead to complications if combat lasts for an extended period of time or if one's Pokémon is relatively low on energy. In general, the struggle attack basically functions as an exhausting tackle attack that forces the user to use up what little energy he has left to ram the opposition with the full weight of its body. The struggle attack is rarely seen in battle because most Pokémon, even when they are completely exhausted, can still fight back with their bodies without having to rely on specialized moves, such as with basic physical attacks like Pound or Scratch. However, in cases where they are unable to utilize any basic moves, due to either injury or lack of energy for projectile attacks, a desperate self-harming strike may be all that can be performed. The term desperate is used liberally here to simply refer to the fact that the attacks are performed at full strength despite the fact that the user is exhausted and very low on stamina. Most battles rarely ever go on long enough for this sort of a situation to involving the struggle attack to arise, so the attack is almost always seen in cases where moves such as Spike, Protect, or Detect have been used to protect against damage, or otherwise drain the opposition of its stamina quickly. Since power points usually determine how much stamina is needed to use an attack or technique, it comes as no surprise that Struggle technically has infinite power points. It is only labeled as having one power point because computer programs designed for analyzing combat situations are unable to directly comprehend infinite power points. In turn, since the attack is done with virtually no stamina, the user cannot guard itself against the brunt of its own strike, and receives approximately 25% of its maximum HP and recoil damage, though the move is at least gifted in that it is guaranteed to always hit its mark. Perhaps most importantly of all, however, although the struggle attack is considered to be a normal type attack, it technically has no type, since its damage is based on the impact of the user's mass without any regard to type or function. This means that all types of Pokémon, including Rock, Steel, and Ghost types, will still receive neutral damage from the attack. The exact reasoning why, however, is currently unknown but is being studied intently. It is possible that this effect is due to the fact that the user is effectively flinging its mass and not itself at the opposition, somehow bypassing the defenses of Rock and Steel types and negating the Ghost type immunity to normal type moves. Even then, though, the hypothesis is speculative at best and difficult to fully comprehend or practically apply. The struggle attack is not very powerful at all and often proves to be more of a threat against the user than the opposition, but when no other options are left, this move can at least give some Pokémon a chance to potentially finish off an opponent in battle, if not themselves first. Since the struggle attack is a move of pure desperation and is only seen in a few specific cases, countering the move is very difficult and is even harder to prepare for, as its execution style will vary tremendously. Armor is of little use for protecting against this attack, but this is only because the move technically does typeless damage. The struggle attack is perhaps the most problematic move out there for trainers, and while it can prove to be a threat if the opposition has whittled down a Pokemon's HP to extremely low levels, this move should probably be seen more as a boon for trainers, as it signals that the opposition is literally on its last legs and will fall quickly in battle, regardless if it is due to your own offenses or the brutal backlash that comes with executing this desperate attack.
That's it for now, but look forward to the next set of moves here on TM Technical Movement. Thank you all for watching this video. It always brings me great joy to see others enjoying the work I do to try and make the world of Pokemon and the fascinating creatures that lay inside of it feel as real as they possibly can. If you really enjoy my work, please feel free to leave a comment and subscribe, as I always do my best to respond to any and all comments that are left on my videos. In addition, if you wish to learn more about my work and help support it, you can find links to my Patreon page, as well as email and other contact information to my work on DeviantArt in the video description down below. Furthermore, you can find a link to my Discord server there as well if you'd like to get a first glimpse at what videos are coming up next and converse with other fans of the world of Pokemon. Thank you for taking the time to watch this, and have a wonderful rest of your day.